Thank you. It is a real delight to be with you. It's an honor and a privilege to be way out here in the West and to be able to fellowship, to learn from you, to be in this part of the country. It is I brought the rain with me. Thank you very much. So, you know, one of the biggest temptations in anything like this, when you have somebody come from especially a different region like I am in Virginia, where we get, in the Shenandoah Valley, we get 30 inches of rainfall a year. So we're in a rain shadow, actually. We're in the same horticulture zone as South Dakota because of our elevation and the mountain ranges in between us. And, you know, the temptation, I have it, you have, all of us have it. You know, this person from afar comes and, oh, well, they're doing what they can do because, well, they get more rain than we do, or they have better soil, or, you know, their neighbors actually want to spend money on good, you know, authentic food. Their cows respect electric fence better. You know, they seem to stay in better. Seeds just magically grow in their fields, you know, and their spouse actually loves to hear new crazy ideas, and their kids don't roll their eyes at them when they've got crazy. And so I'm here to tell you that believe me, we are far more similar than different. I've traveled the world. I just came back Sunday night from a week in Uruguay at a conference there, and trust me, we are way more similar than dissimilar. We deal with a rogue cow that, what is wrong with that cow? She just won't, you know. And we have you know, droughts. It's relative, you know. For us, if we go, you know, 100 days without a drop of rain, that's equivalent to you going a year without a drop of rain. Okay, I mean, and the plants are. And we all struggle with our relationships and keeping everybody in the loop and everybody happy and everybody healthy, and so you know, we're way more similar than dissimilar. So one of the most interesting things I ever encountered in all my travels was I was doing a school program, and they had a 5-acre little farm hooked up to this school program, and all the kids in the middle school in the school district came and spent a couple hours a week at this farm, and they had 2 ladies running this farm, and they created an earthworm box about the size of a coffin, you know, about 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet deep, this worm box. And they asked, one of the homework assignments was, okay, next week when you come, bring some food. And so the next week, all the kids came with their little things, you know, and they had you know, gummy worms and you know, Lunchables and whatever, candy kisses, and all sorts of things. They put them in the box with worms. And the 2 farm ladies, gals, they put in a banana, a half a pound of ground beef, a bit of cheese. And so the next week, the kids all came back, and they charged up the hill and opened up the box. And there were the gummy worms and the candy kisses and the Lunchables and Hot Pockets and this stuff, you know. Nothing touched. Where's the banana? You know, where's that ground beef? You know, where's that cheese? Well, the worms ate it. And the obvious question then to the kids was, why would you want to eat something even worms won't eat? And I thought that was one of the best object lessons to show the link in the biology. Our microbiome, the soil, the worm, the alimentary canal, you know, our gut is similar to the alimentary canal of a worm. And so as we have worked at our farm, we have just become really enamored. The title of this talk is supposed to be Dancing with Earthworms, so I'm getting there, trust me. We have been enamored, and over the years, you know, we came in 1961, and there were no worms. There were 0 worms. When we came in 1961, it was a property of gullies, rocks, and weeds. remember, this was the Shenandoah Valley. This was the breadbasket of the Confederacy during the War of during the Civil War. And literally 8 miles from our house is a blacksmith shop where a guy named Cyrus McCormick invented the reaper, 1837. It's the official beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the reaper, because it got rid of the scythe, okay? And that was the beginning of mechanization, real mechanization in agriculture. And so, our people before us plowed the valley. The reason that it was such a great breadbasket was because of our elevation and lower rainfall. We could produce higher value, higher quality wheat and barley and things than they could in Eastern Virginia, where it was more temperate, more rainfall, warmer, all that. So by the time we came, in 1961, the farm had been leased and rented for about 40 years, and there were gullies. The deepest one we measured was 16 feet. 16 feet from the top of the gully to the bottom. Now, 16 feet. That's a lot of soil, okay? And Dad got into some Andre Voisin stuff early on. The godfather of modern controlled grazing. He invented the term rational grazing. And so he started, looking at this, moving the cows around. And problem was, we didn't have enough soil to hold up electric fence stakes. So Dad went to town, got used car tires, mixed concrete. I was just a little kid, okay? That's why I'm saying Dad, okay? And he mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow and put it in these used car tires, pushed a 1/2-inch pipe down in there, and then he'd pile these on a tractor platform. And my brother's a little older than I was, and the two of us little kids, we were old enough, we were just strong enough that we could both grab on the edge of this tire and kind of heave it off the tractor platform as he drove slowly down through the field. Then he'd go along and stick electric fence stakes, rebar, electric fence stakes. This is before, PowerFlex and all these people were, Gallagher and all these were around. And he would stick these electric fence in them, and that's how he moved cows, because we have large areas, the size of this room, that were solid rock, no soil, no vegetation, no nothing, solid rock, like scabs, out. And started moving the cows around and doing the things we do. And over the years, I watched these, just like the scab is the perfect example that I know. Just like a scab on your skin, these big galls would every year you'd see soil build into them about 18 inches on the edge, 18 inches a year, just like a scab on your hand. It doesn't heal from the inside out; it heals from the outside in. And you start getting new skin on the outside, and then the scab, flakes off a little bit, and it gets smaller and smaller, and finally that last little, you pull that and you've got new skin and you're done. That's exactly the way this soil, which of course is the skin of the earth, started being created. And about 15 years ago, finally the last one finally closed up, and we have soil on all these places. It's not deep, it's 8-12 inches, okay, but it's soil, it's there. And I've seen that in my lifetime. And so to be able to have watched that kind of healing is remarkable, and that journey, that benchmark of healing has been the earthworm. That's what we've been able to see, because I remember reading about earthworms and how important they were, and how many you wanted, 12 per cubic foot, and all this stuff, and how much soil they would build if you had these earthworms, and you wouldn't have any. And now today, we have people come with tape recorders into spring to tape and run along the ground and tape as they walk, and the sucking of the earthworms. There's so many of them sucking into the ground on the spring, not on a hot July day, but in the spring when they're all really busy, and people turn their ankles on the earthworm castings. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this has happened in my lifetime, and I'm not ancient yet, but I'm getting there. But to see that and to be able to be hands and feet of a caretaker that has the privilege and honor of being God's masseuse of this ecological umbilical is truly remarkable and a blessing to have participated in this level of redemptive capacity as an object lesson of healing. So, with that in mind, let's dig down a little bit on these worms. One of the problems when we talk about worms like this is that I've decided that to be a worm lover, you have to be a sissy, because we men, you want to come in and the wife says, hey, my Hank, my hunk of a husband, what did you do today? And we're like, oh man, I tore this up and I ripped this out and I, smelled the diesel fuel, I got, pig iron under my thighs, that's a, machismo, that's the thing. It's not masculine to come in and say, oh, I made the cows happy and I danced with earthworms. That's just not what men do. See, and so here we are with this, with this almost societal emotional conundrum with how we're interacting. So the way I like to look at the soil, just in our imagination here, is there are numerous things. There's chocolate cake. I mean, people have tried to describe a good soil numerous times. My favorite is a cathedral. I'm not sure I heard who said that to me the first time. Might have been Ray Archuleta. I don't know. But anyway, somebody. I just borrow everything. I steal everything. I'm a plagiarist. I don't have anything original. I just steal from other people. But somebody told me the soil is actually like a cathedral. You think about a cathedral. Well, think about this room here. It's great big. There's actually fairly modest structure here. What strikes you is the amount of space. That's what you go into a cathedral. There's structure, there's skeletal structure, but what takes your breath away, right, is the vaulted ceilings and the space. And so the soil is actually, a good soil should be like a cathedral. It should actually have less structure but be full of space. What's that space for? Imagine all these rooms in this cathedral, and you've got all these microbes. You've got 7 billion per double handful, 7 billion. Well, they need a place to live. They can't live in the walls. They need space. So they're sloshing around these rooms. They're kind of half full of water. It's a kind of a big wetland marsh. And the worms are moving through the passageways. Those are the great big things in this biological cathedral. And so the idea of a cathedral soil is all about creating space. And we'll come back to that as we go forward. But earthworms, in my view, are a benchmark of everything. The canary in the mine, they're the benchmark of everything. So if we're going to dance with earthworms, okay, we gotta find out what this partner likes. It's like if you're gonna dance with your spouse or dance with a romantic partner, you want to dance with them in a way that honors and respects their needs. Okay? And so the first thing that I notice about worms is they like to be fed on top of their heads. They don't like deep tillage. Deep tillage rips them up. They don't like things being knifed in. They don't like things being channeled in. They don't like inversion, like a moldboard plow, which inverts and slices them all up and puts aerobic soil in the anaerobic and anaerobic in the aerobic and all that. They want to be fed on top of their heads. And they want to be, and so this biomass is their feed, and it decomposes then on top of the soil. The way the worm works is the worm goes down and secretes a saliva that dissolves minerals in the rocks, brings that mineral up and deposits it on the top of the soil, and then takes decaying organic matter down into the soil. The earthworm is a vertical mover of decomposing things on top of the ground and minerals that are under the ground. And they want to be fed when they're active. So many years ago, back in the 60s, the farm would only hold about 10 cows. In fact, when I was 13, the first thing a farm boy gets to do, the first thing you get to drive is the hay rake, right? The mower, that's a little bit technical. The baler, that's really technical. But the hay rake, get on there, boy, and just, drive around and around and around or whatever, right? Hay rake's pretty simple. So I'm 13, 14, I start driving the hay rake, and I can well remember 16 swaths to make a little anemic windrow. Today, one swath makes a windrow you can't jump over, okay? So as we were looking at this infertile, you'd have thought we were growing thistles and broom sedge and wild strawberries and brambles for crops. And we started feeding hay in the barn, and Dad and Mom both worked off farm. So on the weekends, when Dad was home, we would have to clean out the barn so the cows didn't get all messed up, concrete floor. And so we cleaned it out. And what we started noticing was that what we applied from Christmas to about February, middle of February, in the spring, you couldn't see where we'd spread anything. I mean, it was like, didn't do any good. What we spread from mid-February on, well, it was like you painted it green. I mean, you couldn't stand on it. It grew so fast it jumped back and knocked you off your feet. What was the difference? And we had this aha moment. Oh, when we're applying this manure, which you'd think is really good, in the dead of winter, by spring, it all either leaches or vaporizes and it's gone, and there's nothing there because the biology in the soil is all hibernating. It's cold. They're kind of hunkered down. The worms aren't making castings. They're not doing their vertical. They're all down there curled up. Okay, it's it's zero. It's we're ice skating on the pond. It's cold, and so the soil biology is cold as well. And so then we said, well, goodness, we're just wasting all this material, even though it's manure, it's organic, it's it's supposedly good stuff. We're just wasting it all. So we said, well, how can we make sure that we only spread it when the worms are active? And of course they come through the winter. Hey, they wake up, soil temperature comes up a little bit, and worms come out of their hibernation. They start to move around, and whew, man, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten for 3 months. Just like you and I would be if we hadn't eaten for 3 months. And so the worms are now hungry, and that's when they want to be fed on top of their heads. And so we said, well, how do we make this happen? Because if we don't clean out behind the cows, they're going to get manure-y and filthy, and they're going to be walking in their briskets on poop. That's not good. And so we started with the carbonaceous diaper. And so we bought a wood chipper, and a used wood chipper from one of these, tree crew outfits. And it was one of these zing, zing, dangerous machine, let me tell you. And let me tell you, when we bought it, I can remember I was in high school. I might have been 15, 16 when we bought the first one. And I remember that guy in the yard selling it to us. Boy, these two hillbilly farmers coming in to buy this sophisticated machine, and he just knew we were going to end up through it. So he told us about one of their workers that got caught in it, and they cut it off when he was about halfway through it, and scared us to death. Anyway, we were real careful with that machine, but we started shipping. And so when we'd clean a fence line, we'd work down along the creek, we worked up in the woods and started, thinning and working and upgrading our tree inventory, whether it's in a fence line, creek bed line, woods, or whatever. That became carbon that we would then bed the cows with the carbon, and that carbon then absorbed the manure, the urine. Those cows were dropping 50, they still do, they haven't changed that much, 50 pounds of goodies out their back end every day. 50 pounds of goodies per cow, okay? And it's sloppy. And if it gets dry, it wants to vaporize. And if it gets wet, it wants to diffuse into the groundwater, and you lose it. So this carbonaceous diaper was a way to hold on to that. Now, the darling in the orthodox commercial industry was manure lagoons. Build these big manure lagoons. We got the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and boy, they were actively, Virginia General Assembly passed a multi-million-dollar deal grant program to pay for farmers putting in slurry tanks. Problem is that's so acidic, when you spread it, you have dead worms on top of your ground, okay? And besides, we want to keep the poop out of the water. We don't want to put it in water. We want to keep it out of the water. And in nature, there's no slurry systems. And so composting actually uses nature's platform of decomposition with carbon to be able to do this. And so we began bedding. Well, then the problem was, the hay gate, the feeder that the cows were eating through, as the carbonaceous diaper built up. Well, next thing you know, the cows are standing on their heads trying to eat hay. So then we had to invent boxes that we hung with a little hand winch pulleys, like curtains on a barn, that we could crank. And these boxes, we could crank them up 4 feet as the bedding built up. Okay. And immediately when we started taking out that material, originally we didn't actually compost it. It was a way for us to hold it in whatever chemical molecular suspension until 1st of March, early spring, and we could go out and spread it. And boy, then we started seeing results. We started seeing green grass. We started seeing, a shift in the soil, and that was a game changer. We said, well, if that gave us this benefit, well, what if we actually composted it? Because composting takes, 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. There's a synergy, a symbiosis in composting because you have the biological activity on it. And so we began composting, and we'd pull it out. We'd make our windrow compost piles, and that was very, very beneficial. But it was a lot of materials handling. And by now, fertility's starting to come up. We went from 10 cows to 20 cows to 30 cows on the same acreage. Windrows are getting bigger. Now it's not 16 swaths, it's 8. All right, and you're starting to. We actually had to, build a new barn because the old one wasn't big enough to hold now the hay that we were able to make because the fertility was coming up. We never planted a seed, never sprayed, never bought a bag of chemical fertilizer, but just our whole goal was how do we completely capture every nutrient that we can possibly have. We fenced out all the creeks long before there was any government grant money to do that. Fenced out all the ponds long before there was any government money to do that. And the other thing that we did, which is huge, was in the late 60s, Dad designed and built a portable shade mobile. So in the summer, those cows, they're looking for comfort, and they find a tree or creek or something like that, and they hang out on a hot summer day. And Dad said, well, if we could make those cows poop where we want them to poop, we'll be able to, get that. And so we built a 50-foot by 20-foot shade mobile, big enough for 100 cows, and we moved it every day through the summer, sometimes twice in a day, and we started seeing green rectangles. And they would stay green rectangles for 5 years. Remember, now we're low fertility here, okay, really low fertility. And so our soil really responded initially to these improvements, okay? And so we had 5 year, you can see the green square, the green rectangle here. And that was critical in allowing us to get heavy impaction. If there's a bunch of brambles, we park that thing on, cows would go in there and those brambles, stomp them all out, and next year it was clover and orchard grass. We never planted a seed. The seeds were there. The seeds were there. To me, the seed is just an amazing thing. It's almost as amazing as an earthworm. Think about a red clover seed. A red clover seed can drop this year and stay viable but dormant for 1,000 years. Now think about that. So, in a few months, red clover sprouts up, drops a seed. 2025 comes, I don't think I'll sprout this year. 2026 comes, I don't think I'll sprout this year. 2027 comes, don't worry, I'm not going to go 1,000 years, okay? But year 737, something changes, and the seed realizes, oh wow, there's a new sheriff in town. There's new management. Look, we've got compost, we've got organic matter, we got earthworms starting. Earthworms are copulating and having babies and things are, wow, I think this is good enough to sprout now. We could be a healthy red. Are you with me? That's amazing to think about, that wisdom of the seed, that it responds. That's why we say your problem is not enough seeds. Your problem is not enough chemical fertilizer. The problem is we're not managing. Our vegetation follows our management. Change of management, change of vegetation. And I'm sure those of you who saw Alejandra's program yesterday, his before and after pictures, it blows you away. Same for us. I mean, for me to think that fields that only made 100 bales of hay 50 years ago today make 1,200 bales of hay on the same field without ever buying a chemical fertilizer, applying minerals, or anything. Just this program is a big deal. So we began doing that, and we said, well, man, this composting takes a lot of effort. We got to handle it twice, got to dig it out, blah blah blah. And so I was down at a conference. That's why conferences are so important like this, because you get ideas. And so I was sitting here and watching an American Livestock Breeds Conservancy talk about heritage breeds. And a lady was up there and she was showing pictures of different heritage breeds, and just flashed up a picture of a pig. I think they were red wattles. They had their little red wattles hanging down. But the pig, that wasn't what struck me. She was all enamored of the exotic pig. What I saw was the pig standing on a steaming pile of horse poop with all his nose, he'd been digging in it, and it was like an epiphany, like a lightning struck. Oh, of course. Why would we use machinery to do this aerating and composting when we could use pigs? They've got a plow on the end of their nose. So I went home, and the next winter, when we were building this carbonaceous diaper, I started adding corn to it, about 80 pounds per cubic yard. And that corn, then, the cows are heavy. They tromp out the oxygen. It's anaerobic, fermented the corn in there. The cows come out and go grazing in the spring. We put in the pigs. The pigs then, if you look at a pig, they all have a sign on their forehead. It says, "Will work for corn." And the pigs then seek the fermented corn buried in this carbonaceous diaper, which is 4 feet deep. I mean, you got to have enough. You got to be able to lift your gates, lift your hay box, because the cows are rubbing their backs on top of the hay shed, right? And And the pigs then go in and seek the fermented corn, and in doing, like a big egg beater, they oxygenate it and convert it from anaerobic to aerobic compost. And when we haul it, and then when they're done, it's all already, torn apart and friable. If you've ever like shoveled a straw stall, you know how it binds up, and you can get a hernia pretty quick, trying to dig that stuff out. Well, the pigs rip all this up, tear it up, and you can just, it's just all compost, beautiful, friable, spread it on the fields. And then we've got another, ratchet up of response in the soil. So worms like to be fed on top of their heads, and they want to be fed organic matter, something that decayed or is decayable. They don't want inanimate stuff. They want stuff that was living, that's decayable, whether it's manure or compost, but something like that on top of their heads. Next, they want brown carbon. Okay? Either brown or digested. And of course, digested would be manure, which tends to be brown. Think about nature. Think about nature's template. Nothing goes onto the soil until it turns brown. As long as the plant is green, the leaves are green, the needles are green, they're on the plant standing upright collecting solar energy. They only fall to the soil surface when they turn brown. And that brown is part of lignification. What happens is that the structural, the cellulitic structure in the membranes of that green material moves to something that can burn, burnable. You can't burn green material, okay? But you can burn brown material. And that burn moves it from protein to carbohydrate, okay? And so the lignified carbon moves it to a structure that the soil biology wants to eat. It doesn't want to eat green material, okay? It wants to eat stuff that will burn. The cellulitic structure is what you're looking for. And you don't want toxic materials. Slurry manure, chemical fertilizer, those are all acid. So the magic of the alimentary canal in the worm, as it goes through the soil, think about this. In that alimentary canal, the worm takes in a pound of material and it excretes a pound of material. So it's the same coming in the front as going out the back end. But what's coming out the back end has 3 times the calcium, 7 times the phosphorus, 11 times the potassium of what went in the front end. Now, if it took in a pound and excreted half a pound, we say, okay, the worm's just, it's concentrating stuff. That makes sense. But the fact that it's taking in the same as it's excreting, and yet has these, and I've just given you 3, but everything is just, it makes everything way higher than what came in. Nobody's been able to figure that out. It's like alchemy. It's like making gold out of lead. How does a worm take in X, excrete X, and or excrete Y, or the same stuff, okay? But this is so much more fertile. Nobody knows how this happens. We put men on the moon, we've got AI and all sorts of things, but we don't know how that works in a worm's gut. One of the best things that feeds the organic matter in the soil, this biomass, are long grass roots. So what happens in grass when grass is mowed, either mechanically or with an animal, that plant wants to create bilateral symmetry. If you could get down at the soil horizon and look at the soil horizon, The plant wants to have the same amount of material above ground that you can see as it has below ground that you can't see. And so the plant actually sloughs off root hairs, and there are miles of them. Sloughs off root hairs. We call this pulsing the pasture. If you, let me just drill down on this a little bit. If you, let's say you want to plant a couple of apple trees, okay, next year, and you order some 2 or 3 year old apple tree stock from a nursery. Comes in the mail in a little tube, right? What does it look like? Does it look like a tree? No, what does it look like? Looks like a twig, looks like a stick. Well, what they do with the roots? What they do with it? They clipped them. Why? Because the transplant shock is so much that if you left all the appendages on, the transplant would die trying to keep all those branches and root hairs alive. The same thing would happen to us. If it were 40 degrees out here and raining and we didn't have any clothes on and were naked and ran out there, we would start to hypothermiate, okay? And what happens when you start to hypothermiate? Does your liver shut down first? No. Where do you get frostbite? Yeah, fingers, nose, toes. Your body starts to shut down its extremities to preserve your heart, your liver, your lungs, okay? That's the way we respond to shock, all right? The same thing is true in a plant. It responds to shock the same way. And when you have a grass plant that's eaten, that puts it into a temporary shock period. We can also call that exercise, okay? It exercises that plant, so it's not just, lethargic. It's not we don't want couch potato plants. They need to be exercised, and that's where grazing management comes in. But only a certain kind of grazing management. Grazing management that encourages long roots in plants. Well, how do you get long roots in plants? How do you get a suffusion and a profusion of organic matter into the soil that can be sloughed off? You get it by letting the tops get long, okay? And that's where controlled grazing. I know there's numerous talks here. I won't belabor the point about controlled grazing. I'll just tell you that that this is one of the big benefits of what we call mob stocking, herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization. I bet you don't think I can do that a second time. It's called mob stocking, herbivorous solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization. And yes, I did practice in front of a mirror for a long time before I did it in public. But that's what this mob stocking, creating a what we call a pastoral mosaic, all right? And so we have pastures that are just grazed, that are in shock, recuperating. We have pastures that are beyond shock, and they're flourishing. And we have pastures ready to be grazed that are waiting, that are in this long phase that is shading the soil and is creating the root structure that you want. When things decompose in the soil, when organic matter decays in the soil, it exudes a gas. What's that gas? Exactly, thank you, CO2, carbon dioxide. You're smart out here in Utah, yeah. All right, so carbon dioxide. So we're back to our cathedral. Think about this cathedral, okay? And it's got all these rooms in this cathedral, and it's got twigs and stuff in there, and it's decaying, and the carbon dioxide is. Are you with me? Okay, and it encounters H2O. What's H2O? Water. H2O plus CO2 creates an acid. Hold that thought just for a minute. So if this clicker here were a rock, we went out to one of your fields and we picked up a rock. We brought it in here, we said, I wonder how much molybdenum, boron, zinc is in this rock. We could treat it with sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid. We would treat it with an acid to break out as a reagent to find out what minerals are in it. You know what the most efficacious acid we could use is? Carbonic acid. That's H2O plus CO2. It's carbonic acid. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Okay? So our mineral deficiencies generally are not because we don't have enough minerals. It's because we don't have enough decay going on, enough biomass decay going on in our soils to create the carbon dioxide to percolate up through this cathedral and make carbonic acid to break out the minerals that are in our parent rock material. Does everybody agree with me? The rocks you have in your field probably have the same amount of boron, molybdenum, zinc, copper that they had 2,000 years ago, right? I mean, yeah, okay. And so this is good virgin material. You know, this isn't depleted material. It's virgin material that just needs to be acted on. So this carbon thing is a big deal. You know, we say our farm is a carbon-centric farm. It's running on a carbon economy. So we are carbon fiends. I mean, if if the town chips its Christmas trees, we get those chips. The utility crews that clean up the rights of ways, you know, we give the crew chief a Thanksgiving turkey, and he'll drive 10 miles out of his way to dump chips at our place. We have we purchased our big fertilizer expense. We don't buy any fertilizer. What we do have is an industrial chipper that will take 19-inch material. So you can huck a 40-foot tree in there, and it'll generate a cubic yard of biomass every 2 minutes, because we use like 30 tractor-trailer loads of chips here. We got 1,000 cows, and chickens, and pigs, all this stuff. There's a lot of we got a lot of carbonaceous diaper, okay, to work with. But that compost then, feeding in the spring when the earthworms are hungry and all the soil conditions are perfect for metabolizing dinner, that's when we apply the compost. And it's magic. All right. Another thing about earthworms is that they love other participants. They don't live in a vacuum. They like socialization just like the rest of us. They probably didn't have somebody tell them to wear masks a couple of years ago. And they continued to, you know, go to parties and dinners and socialize, and, you know, they got along great, and probably they didn't, anyway. So they love their fellow microbes. They love the megafauna above ground, the flora. They love biodiversity. Worms are the ultimate cycler. They are the ultimate cycler of everything. And animals are all part of the system, herbivores being key. One of the biggest reasons that nature has so many herbivores and other animals is because in nature there's a gravitational pull for biomass, for rock particles, minerals, from the top of from hilltops down into valleys. That's why valleys tend to be fertile, hilltops tend to be infertile, and definitely slopes, because gravitational pull is pulling water down, is pulling minerals down, is pulling leaves down, grass down. Everything is tending to slide downhill. And so the animal in nature is the only thing that can take fertile valley biomass and get it back up on a hillside to restart and refeed this biomass cycle, this carbon cycle, okay? And we can do it now with manure spreaders, we can go uphill, okay? But before manure spreaders, the way God designed it was for these animals to be able to eat in the valleys, and guess what? He gave predators to make the animals in the valley scared and say, how are we going to see when the coyotes come? Let's get up on that ridgetop. We can see out where they come, right? And so the predator-prey relationship is a beautiful choreography, a carbon choreography between the valleys and the hilltops to move gravitationally fertile soils from the valley up onto the hilltops and create a democratized, egalitarian fertility program. Is that not cool? Okay. So if it weren't for livestock, if it weren't for animals, the worms would leave the top of the ridge tops and the slopes, and they would only be in the fertile valleys. So if we want to cover the landscape with worms and all the benefits that the worms induce in the soil, if we want to cover the landscape, we need to make sure that we have this animal component to be anti-gravitational to keep moving the biomass up the hill. And we can be thankful for predators and all those things. And so that's why, we as farmers in our, as we do our thing, we need to be cognizant that we're part of that great elaborate choreography as well, and take our responsibility seriously that, okay, I need to get stuff up the hill. A personal pet peeve of mine in our community, I don't know how many times I see, for example, mineral boxes down in a ravine, or somebody feeding hay down in a ravine. I say, what? Get it up on the hillside, right? The valley already has plenty of fertility. What we want to do is get everything up there. Shade mobiles, mineral boxes, cow troughs. Get them on the highest ground, not down in the low ground. Be strategic about placement so we become collaborators, facilitators with the earthworms, okay, to bring all that up and give them something to eat other places besides just in the valley. And so the cow digestive tract is actually, I like to think of the herbivorous digestion as like, the perfectly designed compost. Making compost, and we make, thousands of tons of compost at our place. But compost it's a bit of an art. I mean, it's a science, but it's also an art. And if you've ever made a lot of compost, you got to have a lot of things right. Or it might be too wet, it might be too cold, it might be too dry, it might be too much carbon, it might not be enough nitrogen. I mean, there's all sorts. The recipe developed by Sir Albert Howard in Agricultural Testament in 1943, when he brought scientific aerobic composting to the world, it's a recipe. And recipes can have components and ingredients that have to be in the right balance and the right all that. But the beautiful thing about a cow is her composter is always the right temperature, always the right microbes, always the right moisture. So a cow can take forage and compost it in 24 hours, what would take me 6 months to do with an outside compost pile. So the cow is a perfect composter, and then comes alongside as an ally of the worm as we integrate animals and bring multi-speciation, and of course, poultry, pigs, goats, sheep, turkeys, all of that variety and all that different kind of manure, organic matter, feeds the soil. let me give you one other little microbe, one of my favorite ones. It's Azotobacter. Azotobacter bacteria. It is a nitrogen-fixing freestanding, so it's not a rhizome, it's not a nodule on a legume, all right? This is a microbe that's freestanding, that just lives on its own, and it sucks down nitrogen from the atmosphere. But it's got a problem. It's got a problem. It only comes out of hibernation when organic matter goes over 4%. Up until 4%, Azotobacter is basically dormant. But at 4%, it awakens, and it will bring down 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year if it's functional. Okay? So, what's our weak link? What really is our weak link? Now, worms need moisture. If there are things that make the worms run away, cold makes them run away, and dry makes them run away, and heat makes them run away. So they need moisture. They need a cool, damp soil. And so one of the reasons that mob stocking, herbivorous, solar conversion, lignified carbon sequestration, fertilization is so important is this mosaic of thick, tall vegetation creates a breakup of raindrops. When raindrops hit bare soil, they make little craters, and if you've seen, pictures of this, I mean, they're like bombs, and they make craters. That thing's hitting at 100 miles an hour, and that big raindrop, bang, right on that, and it's splashing out the soil, and this, of course, makes a cap on the soil cover as it splashes out the clay particles. If sand, you're going to love this. We've got the Super Bowl coming up. They're going to be in this big stadium in Las Vegas, right? If that stadium for the Super Bowl Sunday was a grain of sand, a grain of clay is one person in that stadium. That's how tiny it is. Isn't that cool? And so what happens is, if the soil is unprotected and unvegetated, those bomb raindrops are hitting on that soil, and what they do is they bounce out those little tiny clay particles, which then form a cap. All right? But if it hits a dense, thick canopy of vegetation, those raindrops splatter, and they actually come to the soil surface as a fog, and that allows a lot more raindrops to be captured. But one of the problems we have in the entire world today is the surface runoff problem, and I'm going to drill down on this, and stay with me here. Surface runoff. P.A. Yeomans, when he developed the keyline system and wrote Water for Every Farm in the early 1950s in Australia, he explained this surface runoff problem. And it's worldwide, it's everywhere. The rule of thumb is that 1/3 of all raindrops become surface runoff, as opposed to springs, aquifers, creeks. So I'm going to get to irrigation in a moment. We do irrigation at our place, and I'll just go ahead and drop the bombshell now. I don't think it's actually acceptable to pump water from aquifers. That'll make everybody stand up and wake up, won't it? Because if everybody sucks water from an aquifer, pretty soon you don't have an aquifer. Australia probably magnifies this more than any country in the world. You go down to Adelaide, and you've got the Murray-Darling River Basin, one of the biggest river basins in the world. And in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s, ocean-going steamboats ran up 500 miles inland from Adelaide all the way up the Murray-Darling River. Today, the Murray-Darling doesn't even make it to the ocean. If everybody starts sucking, there's no water left. So I know as a libertarian, you're not supposed to talk about the commons. You're supposed to talk about my right to do what I want with my property. But we've got to appreciate the commons. The commons is air, soil, water that we didn't put here. And it better be here for our grandchildren to have an enjoyable place to live in. Are you with me? And so I think our responsibility as farmers and ranchers is not to exploit the commons, to rape the commons, but to bring more commons to the landscape. So that as a result of us and our pilgrimage, we leave more soil, more water, and thank you, I get chill bumps every time I start down this little warpath, so that we leave more soil, more water, more air, more biodiversity, more economic viability in our rural communities. Are you with me? It's more. We live in a time where we're fixated on scarcity. And we hear we're running out of everything. Let's all appreciate that 500 years ago, North America produced more food than it does today. Now, it wasn't all eaten by people, but there were 100 million bison. There were 2 million wolves that needed 20 pounds of meat a day. That's a lot of dead bison and elk and, deer. There were 200 million beavers that ate more vegetables. They're herbivores. They ate more vegetables than all the people in North America today. And we now know archaeologically, discovering skeletons, some of these riverbeds, that there were beavers that were as big as a Volkswagen automobile. I would like to encounter that dude. Okay? Come around the tree. Whoa! It's like in Australia, wombats, they weigh, maybe 80 to 100 pounds. Well, they found wombat skeletons now that were 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall. So, the megafauna was incredible. Audubon sat under a tree in the early 1800s. He recorded in his diary, he said, I haven't been able to see the sun for 3 days with a flock of passenger pigeons flying over. I mean, that was before Tyson, Purdue, Cargill, Monsanto, John Deere, Ford Bronco. There were Broncos, but they weren't Fords. Okay, my point is, North America grew more food 500 years ago than we do today. That should give every one of us, go to sleep tonight meditating on that. Just meditate on that. That is a profoundly, captivating thought that to me makes me question all of our hubris, from fake meat to cell cultured this to hydroponics to vertical farms and LED lights in high rises. I mean, the whole hubris deal, okay? That we're all going to be saved by drones and artificial intelligence and precision farming, and all the farmers and ranchers, we need to put all of our data into a source that Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates can all see through the World Economic Forum, and we'll all be free because we won't own any land and we'll be happy for it. So, surface runoff is a real problem. Now, at our 30-inch rainfall area, that means we're surface runoff, because surface runoff becomes a flood problem. And that's what LA is going through right now, okay? I know, talking here, being here, what could you, we're in the desert. Don't you understand? We're in a desert. Yeah, but you still get 9 inches of rain a year. What's a third of 9 inches? Let me tell you what. Think back over the last year, 2 years, there were some days, not very many, but there were some days, water was running everywhere. And I remember the last time I drove up from I was doing a speech in New Mexico and drove up through Los Alamos. And, every mile there's this big dry arroyo. Do you call them that? Big, and I thought maybe people made them to run, sand rails and dirt buggies and dune buggies. No. Several days a year, those things run full to the gills with water. Okay? So, just imagine if all the effort that's gone into tillage and other projects had been devoted instead to building permaculture-style ponds in highlands all over. Louis Bromfield, writing in Soil Development and Out of the Valley, Pleasant Valley, all of Louis Bromfield books, he said, we don't have a flooding problem on the Mississippi. What we have is a pond problem in the watershed of the Mississippi. By the time water gets to the Mississippi and the Army Corps of Engineers build a huge dam, there's too much volume and too much velocity to deal with. What we need are millions and millions of ponds up in the highlands that are like Babe the Blue Ox, walk, and just imagine, little ponds all over the landscape to democratize, decentralize, and keep raindrops where they hit longer. So do the math. In a 9-inch rainfall area, yes, a desert, 3 inches a year, 3 inches, 1 acre-inch of water is 30,000 gallons. 1 acre-inch of water is 30,000 gallons. That means 3 inches in an acre is 90,000 gallons. Now that's more than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Well, it's about the same. Olympic-sized swimming pool. Per acre in a desert in Utah. Okay? I might be tarred and feathered, but I'm going to make a stand here before I get tarred and feathered. Okay? Because all of us live with the scarcity, I don't have enough. I mean, we cultivate not enough in our culture. We go to bed, I didn't get enough done today. I didn't have enough hours in the day. We wake up in the morning, our first thought is, I didn't get enough sleep. We don't get enough loving from our spouse. We don't get enough communication from our teenagers. We don't get enough, not enough. We live consumed with not enough. And we translate that into our farms, and it shuts down our imagination as to what's possible. So, And what happens is, our young people, let's say we have kids that want to stay on the farm. We grow up with this scarcity mentality, and so the kids, if they like the farm and want to stay on the farm, they're constantly hoping, well, I hope the neighbor dies first. Because the only way to create two salaries is to gobble up the neighbor's land, expand the... I'm suggesting our weak link is not gobbling up the neighbor's land, it is leveraging our manure, leveraging our resources, our carbon base. It is leveraging what we have to create unlimited salary opportunities. My favorite piece of paper is a yellowed piece of paper. My dad died in 1988. Teresa and I had come back to the farm September 24, 1982, and for the first 3 years it was, we were living in the attic of the farmhouse. Attic, we called it our penthouse. It's all how you look at it, right? Glass half full, half empty. And she could keep up with me everywhere I was, because she was up there in the penthouse. And we lived on $300 a month, drove a $50 car. If we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. We didn't have a TV, still don't have a TV. I don't even have a smartphone. I had to look at the app. I've never had an app. I don't know what's going on today. I'm here right now. I don't know how long I'm supposed to talk. I might go on till this afternoon. Somebody just tell me. Anyway, here we were doing this thing, and it took us 3 years till we kind of, okay, I think we're gonna make it. So that would have been whatever, 85, 86. And Dad called me in one day. He said, and after we kind of, I think we're going to make it. And he said, let's do an exercise. He said, bring a piece of paper and a pen. He was in his sick bed. He was ill for a couple years. And he said, let's do an exercise. He said, let's imagine how many salaries we could produce on this farm. Well, Teresa and I had barely, we were just, I think we're going to make it. And he was already ready to the next generation, how many salaries? And we wrote down, I get all teary when that's my favorite, I've still got it in the cabinet, it's in his handwriting. 22 salaries on our little place. You know how many salaries we generate today on our place? 22. Okay? So, you have to be able to imagine it. And I respect and honor standing on the shoulders of somebody who had that level of vision and imagination and living in a glass that was abundant and not scarce. In our area, ponds cost about 2 cents a gallon to build. Might be cheaper here, I don't know. But that's pretty cheap. We use the K-line irrigation system. Think about 90,000 gallons per acre, and if you got 1,000 acres. There are people here I know that have 1,000 acres. 1,000 acres, that means 90 million gallons of water a year are running off of your place. What if you could capture that? You could protect people downstream from floods. And all those ponds up there, they would create evapotranspiration opportunities for better cloud formation, ambient temperature, places for the wildlife to come and drink. You could have a picnic table next to it and take the family out for a picnic, okay? And make a comma in your life, in the hustle, bustle, frantic, frenzied life we have. You don't need to go away for 2 weeks. You need to find commas, little 2-hour, 3-hour commas in life to take the kids and the family and get together. Think about the things you remember from your childhood. It's those little commas when you knew mom and dad had your undivided attention. And places like this, I'm getting down a rabbit hole, but you get what this is big. And it's all part of creating this hydration, this general moisturizing of the landscape that allows the earthworms to flourish. The cool perennial cover, of course, makes the perennial cover cooler. So, on our place, in 1961, our first soil samples measured 1% organic matter. 1% organic matter. Today, 8.2%. Now, think about this. Think about this. Another nice little statistic for you. 1% organic matter holds 20,000 gallons of water per acre. Every 1%, because organic matter is real spongy. It's like a sponge. 1% organic matter holds 20,000 gallons of water. So if we've gone from 1% to a little over 8, let's just say 8, 1 to 8, that's 7 clicks, are you with me? Times 20,000 gallons is 140,000 gallons of water we can hold today that we couldn't hold in 1961. Again, I don't say that, proudly. I just say that blessed that these systems work, okay? These patterns work. And if we can leverage them, the earthworms will dance. And finally, dancing with earthworms requires what they want is they want to be valued across society. One of the big problems in our very techno-glitzy, sophisticated culture is that for all of our spreadsheets and analysis, we have not been able to capture the values of liability activity. Wendell Berry writes a lot about this. He says, what's wrong with us creates more gross domestic product than what's right with us. If we go out to the creek that goes down by our house and we dump a bunch of junk in it and pollute it, the cost of cleanup does not come off of our national GDP. It adds to our GDP because now we got to hire people to come and clean it up. We got to bring trucks in. We got to buy gasoline. We got to do all sorts of stuff to clean this stuff in. I mean, the fact that a dead zone the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico does not create a big negative on our national GDP balance sheet is unconscionable. That a culture as clever as we are, we have not been able to quantify in any kind of accounting system the fact that cheap chicken accounts for half of all the cases of diarrhea in our country. What's a case of diarrhea worth? Has anybody quantified it? It ought to be worth $1, don't you think? Maybe more? Okay. You know, but we don't quantify that. And so, you know, so when people ask me about the price of our food, by the way, a little marketing tip. I know I'm not supposed to speak about marketing, but let me just give you, all of you that are marketing, you can use instead of using the word price for anything, use the word investment. What's the price of your chicken? Well, the investment is $4 a pound. Oh, investment. Ooh, investment sounds, price sounds like you're spending something. Investment sounds like you're building a legacy. Okay, so just a little tip there. That was free for the asking. All right. But our problem is that we tell our people, we say our prices, your investment in our stuff, we're the cheapest in the planet. Well, it's more expensive than at the grocery store. Yeah, but all the costs are in it. We're not giving anybody a case of diarrhea. We're not making MRSA and C. diff with subtherapeutic antibiotic use. We're not injecting mRNA in our chickens and pigs and cows like the industry's doing unlabeled. I could go on, but there are things going on. Does anybody here think that the health and the flourishing of the earthworms is less important than the health and flourishing of Wall Street? We all know, don't we, deep down in our hearts, deep down in our soul, the earthworms are more important than the Dow Jones Industrial Average. But who has ever gone into a banker to get a business loan? I'm going to start a business. Might need a loan. You go into the banker, and the banker looks through your paperwork. He says, maybe you're in Alabama, Louisiana. I can't help but do the boss hog thing. Oh boy, this is a real business plan. They don't say business down south. They say business. This is a real business plan. I think you're going to be a millionaire. In fact, this is such a good plan. I'd like to be your partner. We'll go in together on this deal. But before I give you the money, I've got one question for you. What is this business going to do to the earthworms in our community? Can you imagine a banker asking that question? And yet, don't we all agree that is a more important question than anything else? We get up to go to work in the morning, we're in the shower, singing whatever, Frank Sinatra, and are we thinking about my activities today? How will they impact the earthworms? How will I dance with earthworms? And I think that as we talk to customers, as we circulate among our neighbors and friends and our patrons that are buying our stuff, and this is, of course, I'm a huge believer in direct market food systems. This is one of the reasons why shortening the chain of custody between farmer and plate is so valuable, is because we can preserve these things. Trust me, Cargill is never going to tell their customers, you should buy our stuff because it grows earthworms. Never going to say that. Chick-fil-A isn't going to say that. But what we can bring to our neighbors, our society, our non-farming, we call our customers, we don't call them customers, we call them our patron saints. Okay? What we have the ability to bring to our patron saints is a message that, you're always asking, what can we do? You know, you got all these big things. You got the economy collapsing. You got, stuff going on in the classroom. You got censorship. You got AI. You got Facebook. You got, Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum. You got all this stuff going on. What can you do? What can you do? What can you do today? You can eat by dancing with the earthworms. See, people are still attracted to noble, sacred, righteous, big mission causes. They are. People aren't asleep. People aren't stupid. People love to feel like they are part of a solution, part of a grand mission, part of a grand redemptive capacity. People want to be a part. My dad used to say to us, every bush is a burning bush. Moses. And people still turn aside for burning bushes. There's a reason why our farm gets over 100 applicants for our 11 stewardship spots every summer. It's not because we're better than anybody else. But we stay on mission and we present this vision of you can participate. When I do media interviews, people say, what gets you up in the morning? What gets me up in the morning? I can step on the back porch and I just am overwhelmed with this awesome privilege and honor that I get to be feet and hands of the divine creator to caress this ecological umbilical. I don't have to stand off in the crowd. I don't have to be disempowered. I don't have to, oh no, what can I do? No. We get to participate with that. And our customers, our patrons who buy our things, they need to be brought and encouraged as part of this redemptive team. So that when they sit down and the plate sits in front of them, and they, if you read the tracker series, all that, it talks about squinting to get a really, there's a certain way you can, you know what I'm talking about? It was a kind of a Native American thing, okay? And they could perceive better. You kind of squint your eyes a little bit, you could see things, shadows and all sorts of stuff. Imagine doing that with your plate at your dinner table, looking through that plate and imagining the landscape, imagining the earthworms, and the kind of landscape that you want your grandchildren to inherit. And is that landscape that supports your dinner, is that landscape one that dances with earthworms or one that destroys earthworms? And if we can answer that question, and if we can create that level of messaging and participatory collaboration, we will create a different world. The health of our worms is directly related to the microbial health. I'll take some questions, but I'm going to close with about 4 really quick little, they're not related to worms or anything, but just whenever I get a chance to say something. These have been meaningful to me, so some ideas. Number 1, 4 of these. We've all grown up with the phrase, probably some grandma or grandpa used to say to us when we were little kids, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Grandma was wrong. You know what the truth is? The truth is, if it's worth doing poorly first. We live in a time of scientific techno-perfection, data, and people are absolutely paralyzed from going forward because what if it doesn't work? We encounter this with our patron saints. I've never cooked a chicken before. I've never made. I had one lady. I was on a drop, and she said, "How do you make a hamburger?" I said, "Did I hear you right?" She said, "Yeah, we've been vegetarians for." We have a lot of converted vegans in our customer base, and bacon. Tell you, bacon. When your eye sockets collapse and your muscles wax away and your cartilage is gone, bacon. So how do you make a hamburger? And, so I told her, but paranoid paralysis from I'm gonna mess it up. And so, imagine you're at we got let's see, Easter coming up, okay, and maybe you're with a bunch of family and you're having a dinner, and the latest little Emily Sue, the latest little addition to the family, she's there, she's 8-9 months, and she's toddling around, and Emily Sue comes up, and of course parents are yak, and she comes up to a chair leg, and she kind of grabs hold of it, kind of pulls herself up. And suddenly, probably her mother sees her first and says, "Oh, look, Emily Sue standing up. It's the first time she stood up." You're like, "Ah!" Of course, all the adults, they immediately look at Emily Sue. Emily Sue standing there, like this, and she sees everybody standing there, and she freaks out. "Ah!" Everybody's looking at me, drops her grip, plops down her diaper, right? What does everybody do? Well, all the adults get up around Emily Sue, and they say, "Emily Sue, if you can't walk any better than that, just quit." No, they say, "Yeah, let's try it again. Put your hand up, and because we don't do anything well first. We don't walk well. We don't talk well. We don't put, well, I guess we poop. We don't know where to put it. We don't do anything well first. And I want you to promise me that when you leave this conference next week, when you're trying some new things and you're really wrestling with new things, and you get discouraged, you'll go to the bathroom mirror. Everybody's got a mirror in their bathroom, right? You look in it and hike your diaper up and say, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly first. Because that's the truth. Okay? Number 2, what you least want to do is probably the most important thing you need to do. This one really grabbed me a couple years ago when I saw it, and I said, "Oh man, I gotta use that." See, the way, I'm not pointing fingers here. This is me, okay? And I guarantee you there are things that you ought to do that you've been putting off. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a diversion out on a little eroded bank somewhere. Maybe it's something else. Generally, I find that for me, what I keep putting off, I'll do that another time, is the most important thing that I need to do. Number 3, the biological clock runs on its own schedule. The biological clock runs on its own schedule. By that, what I mean is life is not mechanical. There are mechanical parts of it. Yes, there's leverage, there's, pumps, things are going on, okay? They're mechanical things. But life is fundamentally biological. And the adaptation and the decisions, the relationships that have to be done in the biological sphere take time. One of the most dramatic things I can remember on our farm was, remember I told you, you thought we were broom sedge. I mean, they have broom sedge out here? I don't know. Anyway, it's a junk. I mean, you look at the book and you look at broom sedge and the weed book will say, grows in poverty soil, indicates, 0 calcium and impoverishment. And we used to grow broom sedge like you thought we were growing it for a crop. And I remember I was, late teens, and I'm walking through a field one day, and I see coming right up through this big old clump of broom sedge, a little spindly red clover with a little red blossom on it, red clover. One, it wasn't robust, but it was right up through the middle of a broom sedge. So I go back, I get my weed book, red clover, only grows in very fertile soil and requires high calcium. Got broom sedge, and I got red clover, 2 opposite plants growing literally in the same space. And I realized I'm seeing a transition. I'm seeing a biological schedule. all right? All of our farms and our ranches, we're on a biological schedule. I don't know how they've been abused in the past. I don't know how they've been misused. I don't know who owned them before you got there. I don't know what, if you're second generation, third generation, I don't know what's going on before. Probably a lot of bad things that you're trying to pull back from the brink. You're trying to redeem. You're trying to recapture and bring abundance back where scarcity wasn't. One of our first apprentices was Geronimo. He was from Sonora, Mexico. And we went down to see his family and got to meet his, this is 30 years ago, and got to meet his very, very elderly grandmother, who she had grown up in wealth. And as a little itty bitty girl, they had taken her up in a Model T Ford to Victoria, British Columbia, to a boarding school every summer. And so once a year they drove up through Douglas, Arizona, and up through. She said that as a girl, as a little girl, she never could see the countryside because the vegetation was so thick and lush along the road, she couldn't see out to the countryside. Today there's nothing. Nothing. There are many ranches here that at one time supported ranch schools because there were so many people employed on the ranches because there were so many cows. And now they're down to one family. I was in Australia with a guy that was buying a 100,000 acre ranch in Queensland, Australia. And it was cool. He showed me he had the original 1820 to 1870 herd book from when, whoever the prisoner was that got released in the, prison colony came, all right, and had the first 100,000 acres. And he had the herd book. And at that time, they had 27,000 mama cows. And this guy was trying to buy it just a couple years ago. And today, it's down to 6,000 and terribly overgrazed. Folks, this is all over the world. This is all over the world. And it didn't start with Monsanto, as Alan Savory is quick to point out. The story of human civilization is a story of rape and exploitation and conquistador mentality. That's the truth, okay? Now, let's not respond to that and say, I'm scared to touch the earth because every time humans touch it, they hurt it, So we need to make wilderness areas, lock everything up in parks, and abandon it and get all the people off the planet. No. Let's pull up our big boy pants. Let's step into this. Let's lean into it and say, okay, let's use our mechanical ability with opposing thumbs. Let's use our intellectual capacity. And let's come to this planet. Let's come to our landscape. Let's come to our farm and ranches in a restorative mentality to bring the healing back. That's what we can do. And so wherever we are on that biological clock, we're in a biological sequence, progressing towards something or regressing towards something. And we have the privilege to intercept that trajectory and move it up or down. And finally, number four, I'm giving you today permission to dream. One of the most terrible things that happens in life is we lose our childhood. Think about your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Some of you have grandchildren. Some of you might even have great-grandchildren. Okay, but think about you. I mean, boys can make every weapon in the world out of a stick. I'm being very sexist here, I know, all right? But Children have imaginations. Ever watch a little girl with her dollhouse? I mean, or invite you to a tea party and you sit in a little chair, you know, and you have tea with your little granddaughter, and oh my, it's the coolest thing. The imagination, I mean, they just carry on conversation. The imagination is unbelievable. Okay, why? Because they haven't been told they can't. What happens is, though, we grow up, start into school. Now we've got to meet expectations of a teacher, a principal, a coach, Sunday school teacher, preacher, aunt, uncle. Are you with me? Into teenage years, and maybe you get your first, job. Now you got to meet the expectations of an employer, guidance counselor, college professor, whatever. And by the time we're in our 20s, imagination has been beaten out of us. Then we got to meet the expectations of a spouse. Oh no, that's another whole thing. Then kids come along, got to meet the expectations of kids. And other people who have expectations of me the way I'm supposed to expect to interact with my kid, and life gets so constrained and full that we don't give ourselves the liberty to dream. My mentor, Alan Nation, founder of Stockman Grass Farmer, which I hope all of you should subscribe to, always told me, he said, if you want to know the most pure demonstration of yourself, go back to 10 years old. What did you fantasize about as a 10-year-old? What did you want to do? What did you want to be? 10 years old is old enough to start, developing a personality and character and, having some ideas about life. But it's pre-peer dependency. A 10-year-old is still not totally self-conscious. I mean, a perfect example is my little granddaughter. She was about 5. Her 2 older brothers, they had their businesses, and one had ducks and one had lambs, and she was only 5. Of course, girls are always ahead of boys. And so she was ready to launch some enterprise. And completely unbeknownst to us, we had a customer pickup day. And so she knew there would be people at the farm picking up chickens and beef and stuff, and or extra number of people. And so she went out in the edge of the pond in the field there and picked a nice big bouquet of wildflowers. She walks into completely unbeknownst to us, she walks into the sales building. She walks up to this, she kind of looks around. She picks this handsome guy standing there. She walks up to him and she says, I picked these flowers. I'm selling them for $1, and I'm sure your wife would really enjoy, having a bouquet of flowers. She didn't even give him, but this time our attention was that we're watching this, we're watching this happen. And she was completely ready with plan B. I mean, he didn't even have a time to answer, and she said, but if you don't have a wife, I'm sure you know a lady who would, she was all ready with every contingency. A 15-year-old won't do that. A 20-year-old won't do that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Imagination and dreaming. And so I have discovered, for me, I have to almost get into a yoga pose to clean out, to free up, to give myself permission to dream. Do that. Do that. We feel like we have to get permission to dream because I've got all these, my schedule's full. I've got these things I've got to do. I've got to be here. I've got to do this, and we don't give ourselves time to dream. Go out on the hillside, and just sit for 2 hours. Go back to 10 years old. What did you dream about? That's what I can leave with you. And a lot of times, we love to talk about how to moving cows, building fence, building ponds. We love to do all this stuff. But folks, at the end of the day, if we don't get this kind of stuff right, the other will never be leveraged to its potential. Now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large but not pithy. May tomato blossom end rot affect your Monsanto neighbor's tomatoes. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make our nest a better place than we inherited. God bless you. Thank you for letting me visit with you. Thank you.